Welcome to Heroclix in solo Heroclix playthrough how-to video. In this video we have the X-Men and Mojoverse at 600 points. Now the reason it's called solo Heroclix playthrough, it means I'm using the solo Heroclix play rules from my previous video called Intro to Heroclix Solo Gameplay, How to Play. So I recommend you check that out before you continue watching this video because there may be some rules here that may confuse you. The X-Men win the initiative roll pretty handily thanks to their +6 initiative bonus. Step 1 in the solo Heroclix rules is to roll the deployment dice. In this case, they roll doubles and they have to follow step 1.5. After consulting the combat event chart, I then find the matching numbers, which in this case is double 4, and it says to rally. Remove one action token from each character on that force on the battlefield. Since no one had any action tokens yet, we'll move on to step 2. Step 2 says check deployment orders chart and note the higher number. Normally I'd be consulting frontline finesse, but thanks to Cyclops' leadership I get +1 to my roll and look at frontline firepower instead. I'm also going to use this time to remind you that you can pause this video at any time as useful information may pop up at any moment. And after the X-Men take their turn moving from highest to lowest, we move on to Mojoverse and follow the same steps. A lot of doubles being thrown around so far, and a bad break for Mojoverse as they got Rally the opposing force, meaning that Jean Grey and Pixie, who got tokens from the X-Men team, get their tokens removed. And checking deployment orders, they have to use conservative tactics for the turn, but that doesn't really affect them as none of the characters have an action token on them. Mojoverse gets things started with Dazzler using Running Shot to destroy the object that Weapon X is hiding on. Next, Mojo moves into position carrying Psylocke so she can perplex Longshot's damage up by +1. Longshot goes on the offensive and uses Running Shot against Weapon X. Thanks to the assist by Dazzler, Longshot was able to hit Weapon X for 4 damage. But thanks to Weapon X's toughness, he only takes 3 damage. Next is the man, or Spider-Man, that all of Mojoverse tuned in to see, using his It's a Glider 2 special power that grants him flight and running shot. Shatterstar is placed to create a choke point that would force enemies to engage in combat with him as they would become adjacent to him if they try to pass through there. Spyro opens up a portal to teleport herself 6 squares into the fray to support her team with her probability control. On the X-Men's turn, they roll a 5 for deployment, but because of Cyclops' leadership it turns into 6 unrestricted operations, which means they have no restrictions on any of their actions. And remember, on the Mojoverse, they rolled to rally the X-Men, so Pixie and Jean Grey don't have action tokens this turn, and the X-Men start their turn by showing us some of that famous X-Men teamwork. I should note that Colossus has a slot that you can attach Weapon X onto. Unfortunately, the slot from Colossus's figure is too big and the peg from Weapon X's model is too small. So I had to get a little creative with the attaching. Cyclops, looking to retaliate, stays out of Longshot's range, so he won't use probability control against him. Longshot manages to avoid the knockback thanks to Dazzler being directly behind him, but he still takes 3 damage. The X-Men continue their assault on Mojoverse with Jean Grey using Running Shot. Even though Mojoverse drew first blood, the X-Men are looking to get the first KO of the game. Unfortunately for Mojoverse, they are not a theme team, unlike the X-Men who started the game with 5 theme team probability control, one of which came handy as they were able to turn a missed attack into a KO. Next, Bishop positions himself so he can use Ranged Combat Expert the following turn. By having a clear line of fire to Spider-Man and Spyro, Bishop is threatening to do some serious damage the following turn. Mojoverse catches a break on their deployment roll as they are able to rally the friendly force this time. And remember that they're still bound by frontline finesse, meaning that their non-free actions have to be taken from lowest to highest if they want to maximize their turn. Psylocke uses Perplex on Shatterstar to offset the defensive boost that Colossus got from Pixie. Shatterstar then uses Sidestep and takes a close action against Colossus and successfully hits him for a total of 6 damage thanks to Blades. But Colossus is invincible, so he only takes 3 damage. Climbing up the point ladder, Dazzler uses Running Shot and targets Pixie. Longshot's luck may have rubbed off on Dazzler, as not only does she hit her attack, but Pixie also fails her super senses. This forces Pixie to take 3 damage and Dazzler takes 1 damage. The high-flying Spider-Man takes to the skies again and activates his It's a Glider 2 special power, using Running Shot and doing the very thing he was brought to the Mojoverse to do, which is to incapacitate as many targets as he can. The X-Men use a theme team probability control, but concede further uses to Spider-Man, which leaves them in a very vulnerable position this turn and the following turn. Mojoverse continues to bring the pain with another attack that causes Spyro to have to use probability control, After Bishop takes 2 damage, Mojo and Spider-Man move to get into position so they can start applying some pressure to the X-Men. I think this turn was a really good example to show us how impactful the combat event and deployment orders can be in any turn. Where it seemed the X-Men were getting the upper hand because they got the first KO, now it doesn't feel that way thanks to the rally combat event. The X-Men, looking to minimize the damage, take a defensive position, and even though we got frontline firepower, I just thought I'd like to point out that Pixie was able to move before Jean Grey because she used a free action to sidestep and carry Colossus. Jean Grey pushes her luck and decides to target Shatterstar and Dazzler, but she only manages to hit Shatterstar for 3 damage. The X-Men clear their tokens and prepare for the onslaught from Mojoverse. Mojoverse gets unrestricted operations, and they send Shatterstar to go after Bishop so he can nullify the energy absorption special power. At this point, I decided not to use any of the X-Men's theme team probability controls, hoping that Shatterstar wouldn't get such a high roll on his Blades roll. Mojo continues to carry Psylocke around to have her block lines of fire to him so that way the X-Men keep getting punished by his Smile You're on Camera special power. Psylocke has been working great as Mojo's defensive support character. Meanwhile, the X-Men look to mount a comeback, starting with Pixie healing Cyclops back to full health. And with unrestricted operations, the X-Men are looking to do some damage this turn. Colossus moves into position and throws Weapon X into position so they can form a nice sturdy wall to protect Cyclops on the elevated terrain. This allows Cyclops to get in close and try to do some damage on Spider-Man. The acrobatic Heroclix is unfortunately too agile for Cyclops to hit. Weapon X unleashes a wild swing at Shatterstar and manages to KO him. So while the X-Men turn seemed a little lackluster, they did manage to rack up another KO. Mojoverse catches another bad break with double ones, forcing them to rescue an opposing character, which ends up being Bishop, as he's the only one that's been KO'd for the X-Men. With their operations completely restricted, they're forced to do a route check. Luckily, they're above the 50% threshold, and they continue the fight. And since they're unable to take any actions whatsoever, they pass their turn to the X-Men. The X-Men get a low deployment roll, but it gets a small bump thanks to Cyclops' leadership. This time Bishop makes sure that he gets to use Time Slide, and he uses it to get dangerously close to Spider-Man. Unfortunately for him, Spider-Man continues to be too acrobatic to handle. Pixie then causes some mischief by throwing some pixie dust at Psylocke to try to bring her stats down. Trying to capitalize on Mojoverse's bad luck, she unleashes an attack on Psylocke, which unfortunately is too low. And the X-Men's bad luck doesn't end there, as both Wolverine and Jean Grey miss their attacks for the turn. Colossus then just repositions to try to get a better follow-up turn. Mojoverse can't seem to catch a break as they rolled for aggressive tactics. This means that non-free actions may only be given to characters that already have a token on them. But since they skipped last turn because of restricted operations, no one has a token on them. The X-Men press their advantage and knock out Dazzler. And despite Bishop's and Cyclops' combined efforts, Spider-Man continues to be a nuisance to the X-Men. Seeing the disruption that Spider-Man could cause, it forces me to push Pixie to break away and try to sidestep so he can make an attack on Spider-Man. Pixie takes Weapon X along with her for some backup. She once again throws pixie dust, but this time at Spider-Man to bring his defense down, and she's able to land a successful attack on him. Spider-Man takes a whopping 5 damage, but thanks to his Iron Spider suit, he has toughness and only takes 4. Mojoverse takes their turn, and with frontline finesse, Spider-Man leads the charge. I decide to attack Pixie since Weapon X has a 19 defense in close combat because of combat reflexes. He hits and manages to KO her, while the rest of Mojoverse gets into defensive formations to mount a counter-assault. With no move and attack left on the team, Mojoverse has to be a little strategic with their positioning. Mojo finally has a line of fire to Bishop and he targets them with everyone places on the set. All of this may be too little too late though, as the X-Men's luck continues. The recently knocked out Pixie returns to the map. Weapon X, smelling blood in the water, outwits Spider-Man's super senses and makes a close attack using blades. Wolverine manages to connect and knock out Spider-Man. With the guest star knocked out, the X-Men continue to apply the pressure. Pixie makes her way across the map to help the team out. She uses Perplex instead of Pixie Dust as Psylocke has stealth and Bishop is looking to do a ranged attack on her. And despite Mojo's best efforts to make the attack miss, Bishop connects for 4 damage. With their backs against the wall, the X-Men continued the onslaught. Cyclops makes a close attack against Psylocke and hits, and his 3 damage is just enough to knock Psylocke out. This puts Mojoverse over the threshold of 50% of their build total. This means if they make one more route check under the deployment orders, they're gonna fail it and be forced to retreat. Colossus inches closer to the action and clears his tokens. Unfortunately for Mojoverse, they get yet another low deployment roll, and this time the game ends on a route check as they have less than 50% of the game's build total and have less points than the opposing force. Unfortunately for Mojoverse, they couldn't seem to catch a break with their pretty terrible deployment rolls. And I'm going to use this time to analyze some of the stuff that happened and to see if there's a way we could tweak the solo rules. I honestly felt that Mojoverse had an advantage in the match. I thought it was the other way around coming into it, but as you know, the characters started working together, Mojoverse has a lot of synergy. Unfortunately, this X-Men team doesn't have that much synergy, but they were still able to pull a victory off, partly because, like I said, I think the deployment roles may have screwed Mojoverse over. But that's fine, you know, because playing solo, sometimes you don't want to lean into being, you know, playing your favorite team better. So having this kind of a random factor that the solo rules bring into the game when you're playing by yourself, it really helps your thought process out. And I'll give you an example, you know, like if you go back and watch the X-Men's turn, a lot of the times they weren't really very restricted because they kept getting high rolls. And what you don't see is the fact that I would take a while. I would take maybe 10 minutes to kind of think about the best moves that the X-Men could do because they weren't restricted. So solo play, I do think helps speed the game up a little bit as well. The thought process, as it may give you, you know, an order as to which characters can be used, how they can be used. And so I don't have any complaints so far right now. As of right now anyway, with this game, I don't have any complaints with the solo rules. I am going to keep trying it out. I'm going to keep making different teams to try it out. I'll give an MVP to both teams for Mojoverse. I'll give the MVP to Shatterstar and Mojo. I'm sharing it with them because unfortunately Mojo didn't get a chance to really attack too much since he was being kind of sneaky with his Smile You're on Camera special power. And Shatterstar, as you got to see, he knocked out Bishop. He put a huge dent in Colossus. For the X-Men, it's a toss-up because honestly, they all did their part they all did their part in the victory. I mean, I think they won because of a little bit of a luck on the deployment rolls, but this team still did work very well together. Unfortunately, I can't give just one character the MVP award, but I will say that Bishop was probably the most underwhelming one. Unfortunately, his special power and energy absorption doesn't have any form of damage reducers for close combat figures. And as you saw, Shatterstar was able to knock him out pretty quickly. So like I said, if you like this video and if you would like to see me make more of these types of videos, please like and subscribe, share, comment, so that way I know that there are people watching and are interested in these types of videos so I can keep making them for you. As always, you know, if you see any mistakes, if I made any mistakes, please reach out to me in the comments below. And thank you so much for watching.